cover physics in fun?
No, I think I'm just going to ethics for the rest of the year.
Oh.
Yeah, no, yeah, we'll do it soon. Just so you know, it's not like we're doing a last little bit of biology instead of giving you a test. I could have given you a test on mutations and stuff, and I probably would have had that section over by now. But a ton of your work now, grade 11, grade 12, involves understanding the difference between ethics, value judgments, and we never teach that. So I'm putting sort of a squishing in a mini unit. I'm going to use biology as the example, but hopefully we'll also do something in the physics as well. And it's not, when I ask you which is right or wrong and we're doing an ethical principle in a different class, you should have some knowledge of whether or not your system is objective or not. You don't have to agree with any decisions. As we've just learned, you can come to two entirely different conclusions depending on whether you're a deontologist or a utilitarian. But in both of them, you would be able to explain to someone else how you arrived at your conclusion, and they would be able to agree or disagree with you whether or not you're right. And it doesn't mean they would even agree with you. They can say, well, I'm a deontologist, but I understand your point of view as a utilitarian. That makes sense to me. So this is a way for you to justify your sense of right and wrong and be able to prove it. I will say, they have done studies on philosophy professors, and specifically on philosophy professors in ethics, and they commit no less crime than any other person of a similar socioeconomic class and background. So this is not to make you a better person. I'm not trying to convince you to be good, because we know that the people who know the most about being good still commit the same amount of crimes, except in one particular thing. And other than that, it's the same. So it's more like you have the language and you can back it up. So now you know that if someone says, why won't you operate on that patient and save 6 lives? You can say, well, wait, they have a right to health care. We entered into a relationship as patient-doctor, and in that relationship, I'm getting paid either by the government, if it's a socialized system, or by them directly. And so I have a duty to the patient. It doesn't matter what the consequences are. I have a duty. And you may be consistent with that in the polling, or even as a deontologist, you could say in the railway example, I have no more duty to one than I had to the many. And so I pulled it. It is based on consequences, but I wasn't treating them as means to an end. I wasn't saying that one of them is worth less. I just recognized the fact that there was more, and given that everything else was equal, I pressed the switch. You can actually justify those. I said you were inconsistent, but I lied. I did that just to make you feel uncomfortable, because that's what I do. Apparently I do it a lot. My children get upset with me. Because I want you to think about it and think about the different ways. And in a very simplistic interpretation, the hospital is very deontology, and the train switching is very utilitarian. It's a way to contrast the two. Now, I think we left off here last day with, or did we do biases? Oh, we did biases. Let me just grab my notes. Not that one. And while I'm looking at this,
There's zero benefit of rushing.
I will answer the question I really didn't want to answer. When someone said, where's our test, Mr. Neufeld? And the answer is, right over there, where I left them before the break. I haven't touched them at all. I haven't even looked at them. Now, I am cognizant. It is recording. Like, this is a full confession. I will say that I have had, every day I've sat down and addressed a series of small emergencies that seem to be coming up. And I just haven't gotten to them. I am trying as hard as I can. It's on my list every day. I will get to them. You will get them back. And in the same way that a student will come to me and say, my life is terrible. This has happened. Oh my God, can you please give me an extension? And I go, what are you talking about? This is Brentwood, do it. I'll make the same complaint. When you know the moment when the teacher overshares and they go like, oh, you really shouldn't have said that. My niece has cancer and we have to go to her wedding because they moved the wedding date up. So it happens before she loses her hair and or dies. The prognosis is actually very good. It's not that bad. So there's just been a lot of events in the last 2 weeks. So I may not get to it before Easter, but I'm literally planning to take it on the plane with me if I'm not there by then. So that I will be uncomfortable, squished in a tiny little spot. Because at my size, airplanes are not made for me. And I hate them so much. So much. If any of you have any advice who have flown far more than me, I'd appreciate it. How do you get more room on an airplane?
Buy 2 seats.
You buy 2.
I see it on TikTok.
Okay, but if I buy 2 seats, I just feel fat. Like I'm gonna sit down and go like, these are all mine. And my child, who I will not name, just not to call them out, but he's actually taller than me now. If I buy myself 2 seats, I'm gonna have to buy him 2 seats. I mean, it's unfair. Like, no, shut up.
Not important.
Pardon?
Not important.
It's not important. You know what? You gave me an idea. I buy 1 seat, first class, and 3 other ones for my spouse and 2 children, way back in economy.
And blame it.
I'll just blame it on the airline. Yeah. No. 2. However, in that note, because I know I have to get to it, I actually got up 90 minutes earlier than I normally do today, and all I did was address all the emails in emergency. So I think I'm close. Have I done the example of you where I do things like, where I say 2, 4, 8, and I ask you to do algebra?
Yes.
Do you remember that example?
Is it the clock one?
Pardon? It's not the clock one. Okay. I'm going to do confirmation bias. I'm going to do it with algebra. What I would like you to do, it's not really algebra, I want you to predict or make a mathematical rule that matches what a mathematical rule that matches the rule in my head. What I'm going to do is I will give you an example, a sequence of numbers, and you're to figure out the pattern. Gentlemen.
Sorry,
That is, you guess the pattern. After I tell you my example, you can either tell me what you think the rule is, or you can give me another example, and I will either say it matches my rule, or it doesn't match my rule. So you can get, you can double check it first. And I recommend that you do that first. If you've seen this before and you know what the rule is, hang on to it. But if you haven't, it's a great example of some mathematical thinking. So, my sequence of numbers is 2, 4, 8. What is my rule? No, I'm not. Hands up. I would say start off. Just give me a sequence, and then I will answer. And then if you want, you can do that. Yes.
16, 32, and 64.
That follows my rule. What's my rule? No, that's not my rule. Yes. 2 to the
Power of n.
No, you have to give me a sequence of numbers.
2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 65, 64, 128.
That does follow my rule. What's my rule?
2 to the power of n.
No, that's not my rule.
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3 follows my rule. What's my rule?
Any number. How about -1, -2,
Oh, -1, -2, -3 does not follow my rule.
Any real numbers?
Any real numbers? No, that does not follow my rule. Sorry, that's not my rule. My rule is not any real numbers. Yep.
0, 0, 0.
0, 0, 0 does not follow my rule.
just said that.
And
Say that?
you put up your hand.
That's a-
I like that
You
little
cannot say
example
that, bro.
because at the very beginning, people will just give different examples of the same example. Because I said 2, 4, 8. And then some people will go like, oh, 3, 9, 18. And then they come up with various things that keep confirming what they think. And that's known as confirmation bias. Because they keep doing the same thing and getting the same results. So they think, oh, this must be true. But it is in fact false. I could also give you the example instead of 2, 4, 8. I could have said 1, 1.1, and 1,000. And that would have met my rule. Because it's just an increasing value over time. Confirmation bias. I had it in my, there we go. Tendency to attach more weight to evidence that supports our point of view. This also highlights why it's really important to ask stupid questions that you know are wrong. Because if you know deep down inside that the rule is you double it every time, 2, 4, 8, yet I've said that's wrong, and then all the examples that come in that say, oh, it's 9, 18, 36, and I say, yeah, that follows my rule, and they go, it follows the rule, it must be doubling, and they come up with fancier and fancier ways of doubling. Of asking that. You need to ask, well, is it 0, 0, 0? That's a great one, because it's a completely different rule, and that answer tells you something. When you get something wrong, you get more evidence. When you just confirm something you already know, you actually didn't get any new information. If you hear evidence, we have a tendency only to really remember and attach weight to the stuff we already agree with. So if you hear that, there's a study out that says that the youths, all of the youths are like lazier and not working as hard, and we should be meaner to them in school. And if you're a teacher who's grumpy and thinks the youths are lazy, you're like, that's a great study, I'm going to use that. And then if there's another study that says, actually, this is the least violent, most peaceful, and most hardworking generation we've ever had. We should be doing this in school. You're probably going to lend more weight to that. Ignore the other one. People tend to ignore stuff they don't like. Confirmation bias. Going to skip a ton of examples. Actually, rather than writing this down, I can have you not write down the examples, but just open up all the ones we used to do those. Nice, what page am I on? 79. Belief bias. We're going through a variety of cognitive biases. Did I miss anything? We did confirmation bias. No, did we? Confirmation, yeah, we did. We didn't need to worry about it. We redefine it. Who cares? We're not doing all that. We're not doing this. Forget that. I do like, as soon as anything political by the way, this is old, like 2014 old. This is not something I created for current political climate. It's amazing how the world never changes. While Putin is scheming and beaming on how to take over the world, President Obama is watching March Madness. Obviously, Putin is a threat. That's 2014, 2016. Great move on delay by Vladimir Putin. I always knew he was very smart. Now, someone who agrees with a politician will not see that those are diabetic. They're like, oh man, it's got it right again. Because you tend to agree with your friends. And especially politically, you've probably heard people who it seems like their view changes as soon as the leader changes. It's like, how do you do that? But the point is not to recognize it in your friends. It's really easy to recognize it in others. It's really difficult to recognize it in yourself. I tend to do that, and I used to do it a lot with John Deere tractors. Nope. No. False consensus effect. This is a bias. Tendency to assume that attitudes held by us and by our peers are held by society at large. If you do a lot of pirating or streaming from those sites, you tend to assume that everyone does that. Also, if you tend to be on a certain social media site that say and your stream that has now been tailored for you by the algorithm, it over-exaggerates in your brain how many people must agree with you. And you've probably, in this day and age, talked to someone who clearly only gets their news from a very, very defined set of algorithms. Because they'll say things like the reptilians are in control of our government, or, we should seize the means of production and undergo a communist revolution. And yet they're on the same social media you are. It can really tune it quite finely. And they'll think everybody agrees with them, because that's all they see. So they assume everybody's just seeing that. Good? Any other examples? Any other cool? Thieves tend to assume, oh, this is so true as a house parent. Mr. Neuveld? I know I got caught and I got suspended, but I just want you to know everybody at Brentwood drinks. Like, everybody drinks. Like, so many people drink. It's not just me. And then I've talked to I talked to someone who graduated last year. Like, they're a grad. They went through grade 12. They've been here for 4 years. Lifer. Not a super lifer, but a lifer. And then we were talking as teachers. They had come back for something else. I was asking about, like, how's school going first year. And they were like, their sibling is now going to school. And their sibling got a little bit of trouble at one point in time. And they were like, I didn't know anybody ever drank at Brentwood. I'm like, you were so nice and naive. You have no idea, because you just existed in your own little bubble, and your friends didn't, and you didn't, so you assume nobody did. Don't overestimate. And of course that leads to echo chambers. Good. Excellent. Bandwagon effect. This is what the algorithms are trying to achieve. One of the things that happens, and one of the things people want to do, even if the social media doesn't have an overt agenda, is they would like to surround you with stuff of what they want you. This is basically advertising. So if you're, say, a little angry at a politician, and they can send you stories to make you more angry, maybe they can shift who you'd vote for and just keep that going. It's become a big area of influence and media. Also, if they surround you with people of similar beliefs, Facebook got in a little bit of trouble because they were doing human experimentation. And that sounds like they're doing, like, they have people in a room, and they didn't, of course. They're Facebook. Where a sociology professor might go in front of an ethics committee and have to go through a long and rigorous process to use humans in a questionnaire experiment. Facebook just ran it with millions of people. And what they ran was, it was essentially to test advertising. If they ran certain ads and then they posted, or they raised up feeds of your friends that posted things that were favorable to the kinds of things that were going on in the ad, does it increase the number of people who click on the ad? And does it increase the number of people who then buy the product? And the answer was yes. They can affect what you do just by choosing who they expose you to. And then the follow-up study that they never did, but they proposed, was if on voting day they raise up certain posts by your friends of certain political parties, can they change what your vote might be on your way to the voting booth by giving you different impressions of who your friends are voting for? And their conclusion was, yeah, we could probably do that. And they were immediately told they weren't allowed. It would be very, very easy for them to do. Any social media now has that power in their algorithm. This is both a boon and a curse for people who are gluten-free, is that once it became popular, there was a lot of people who were like, oh, I'm totally allergic to gluten, but I'm going to have a cheat day. If you are celiac, that means it destroys the villi of your intestines. You literally cannot absorb nutrients and you starve to death while eating food. Their intolerance to gluten is not a joke. It is a severe autoimmune disease. And there are people who are also allergic to gluten, but they don't have cheat days. It's not a diet. And there's a lot of people who jumped on and said, oh yeah, I'm intolerant. So they go into a restaurant and say, I'm gluten-free. Now because of celiacs, restaurants will have 2 separate cutting boards, 2 separate knives, an entire separate section where you make things and gluten never touches it. And they will go to a lot of extra work to make sure your food is safe. And at the end of that, after you get that meal, you then order chocolate cake. And the chefs and all the waiter and waitresses and things aren't going to say anything, but then they're going to go, ugh. Because they just did a ton of effort to make sure that your food was suitable for someone who's the equivalent of anaphylactic. It's not anaphylactic, but that bad, and they didn't need to. You can just go in and say, I have a preference on a diet. It's not a big deal if they get ding, but I prefer the non-gluten options, and they don't have to make a huge big deal of it. But people jumped onto the bandwagon when it got popular and kind of ruined it. It was good, though. We have a lot of gluten-free stuff in the stores now. It makes it a lot easier if you are gluten-free, and you do suffer from that because there's more options. When it started, there was almost no options on this shelf because hardly anybody ever ate it. Bandwagon. 9 out of 10 dentists agree. Already mentioned that one. That's easy. This is just a classic example of it. We ran this experiment in psychology class in like third year university. You just get in an elevator with a group of friends, plan ahead of time, and just turn around like you think the door is going to open on the other side. A lot of times you can get the person to turn around because they just do what everybody else is doing. We would have a clipboard and we would stand outside and then we would just look and point occasionally at the top of the building and write notes, and we'd get other people standing there who weren't a part of us, and they would start looking too and pointing, and sometimes they'd even identify stuff that we were looking at that was really cool. We were just seeing how many people we could get to look. All we were recording were the number of people and that were stopping. People like to do what other people are doing. The obedience to authority bias, where you just do what it is that you are told. And I'm going to cross this off and say, helping the community. Because it's not orders. People often mischaracterize this study, and I'm going to go through it because I think it's one of the most fascinating areas of human behavior. This was done post-World War II, and I will be honest, the reason this study was done, it was done solely with the purpose of showing that German people, specifically, must be the most evil people in the entire world. And the study never left America, because it was so fascinating what they found out just on their own population, and it turns out nobody's different. I was just following the orders as the classic, like I was just doing what I was told. And yeah, if there is a sense of this, if you look at a commercial and they're giving you recommendations on a medicine, often the person telling you that is wearing a white lab coat. They are a paid actor, and they are not in a lab. The lab coat is just to give you the impression they're an authority, so you'll do what they tell you to do. They are trying to get the obedience authority effect to work. Now, this doesn't mean that authority isn't an authority. If you are consulting studies, then yes, they're a proper authority. But this is more like obeying authority because. Now, you don't have to write any of this down. We were in science and that's good. This is, I'm going to show you the Milgram's experiment. And that is, here's what happened. View, zoom. It turns out we're not allowed to do these studies nowadays because they're unethical. We can't cause demonstrable harm to someone. Could you poke him? I don't know what's wrong. Is he like sick? Jaden, are you ill? Your head should be up. This particular study this is the experimenter, this is the learner, and this is the teacher. That is something that applies a voltage to his arm, and he is bound so he cannot leave the chair. It gives him a shock. This is the teacher. They can't see each other. They can hear him. And this starts at a level of 1 shock, 2 shock, 3 shock, 4 shock, and goes up, for example. The last 2 are clearly labeled as lethal shocks. Okay? So what we start off is the experimenter has given the teacher instructions and a series of questions to read. They've been explained. They're both they just volunteered. And they just drew from a hat to see who goes where. As the learner is here, they're to memorize a set of words and associations. And once they put it memorized, they're strapped in, they're hooked up, they get electrocuted every time they get a question wrong. What the teacher does is they ask them the question, they look at the answer, it's the wrong response, they shock them, and then in the next question, if they get it wrong again, the shock goes up by a value. Approximately 30% of the teachers were willing to go up to lethal shocks. The only thing the experimenter did is if the teacher asked a question or said, like, I don't think I should be doing this, they would just say things like, this is a really important experiment, and it is important for the experiment to continue. And then they would just see, will they continue going? Now, if you're worried about the learner, keep in mind, this learner is just a paid actor. They are not getting shocked. They're just yelling for fun. Well, not for fun. They're an actor. They're acting out the pain. This person is actually doing no shocking whatsoever. It's all a con. However, they think they are, and they just want to see how many people would go. Psychologists before this experiment were asked to predict how many people do you think would go up to lethal values, and they said less than 1% of 1% of people would do that. 30% and above are willing to do that.
Like lethal,
like kill them. Like the last 2 levels of pain, yeah, are at the level where it will clearly say lethal values. And every time up to there, like the first ones, the learner's like, ow. And then you go, the next one's like, oh, that really hurt. Like it's like you can hear the person. And so versus the experiment, the person here didn't even stay. It was boring. They got used to it. So they would leave, or they would just sit there, and they would just press play on a tape recorder of the previously recorded screams, and so they're just listening to a tape recorder of screams. And then when they got to about here, after they pressed the second to last one, they would just hear silence. And they would still go to the next one. Yeah. Now, I want you to think, this is not like, oh, they were testing bad people. This is 30% of the general population. Now, it's often phrased as they obeyed orders. But they didn't get the highest response at orders. They actually got the lowest response. If the experimenter said, and so they did this multiple times, and the version in which they said, this is an important experiment, I order you to continue, they had the lowest response. More people got out of the chair and would be like, forget it, I'm not doing it, and head out the door. It was higher than I'd like. It was like 5%, 1 out of 20. But like, one of you in this class. But the highest response is when they said, you don't have to. You can go if you'd like. But this experiment is telling us things that are really, really valuable to human nature, and it's really important in terms of therapy and understanding psychology. And for the community, that this experiment continues. We won't be able to do the results without you. You're playing an essential part of supporting your country by doing this. Please continue. And those responses got the highest. That's where the 30% lies. And what they learned is not that people are willing to follow orders, but that people are willing to support their neighbors enough to kill people. If you phrase it the right way, they're willing to do it. And how many times have you heard in the house, I don't want to do this house job. And the house parent goes, well, we're like a family. And everybody has to do their part. And in supporting the community, you have to do your part. And they convince you to do it, not because you want to do it, and not because you were ordered, but because you got to support everybody else. Turns out that's the best way to convince people. They thought they were going to do it in the U.S. as a control, get the low numbers, what their thought was, and then they're going to head over to Germany and just show that they were so much worse. Turns out everybody's that bad. And if you wonder why bad things happen to good people, it's because good people are willing to do bad things if they think they're doing good things. So it's a little concerning. And also, I have to end this with, do not base your entire life philosophy over experiments that happened in the 70s once. This is just one data fact. Maybe it's not 30%, maybe it was just back then. All psychological studies you see when they post their results are usually made on stressed, anxious, sleep-deprived college students, usually male. Why?
Easiest to quick buy.
Pardon?
Easiest to get them to agree.
Easiest to get them to agree?
Quick buy.
Quick buck. Both of those. Professors at the university, they advertise. And I said usually male. That's usually actually not the psychology experiments necessarily, but certainly for all the medicinal ones. So if you're like, why didn't they know that this medicine had such a bad effect for females? And that's the answer is for biological females, they never tested it on females. Why would they never test medicine on females?
No volunteers.
Oh, no, they can get volunteers. That's no problem. They just won't take them. Why? Pardon? Well, they're willing to test it on, well, I will say biological men. You can identify as a female. You can be like, my gender sense is totally female. And they're like, yeah, but your biological male will definitely take you. And then they don't mind that at all, yeah?
Are they scared the results are going to change?
No, in fact, they really want to know the results.
They just don't want to hurt a female.
They just don't want to.
They just don't want to hurt a woman.
Oh, look, chivalry. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
no,
Oh. Okay.
no. Maybe if I phrase it another way, what is a thing that a uterus haver can do that a uterus non-haver can't? They can have babies. So there's a chance, however small, that while you're taking this experimental medication, you could be pregnant, and they would be affecting someone who is unborn and might actually affect them. And there's been enough cases where that happens that they're very, very scared to do that. But it does lead to a complete inequity in our medicine. It is often untested on half of our population, which means when it finally gets tested, nobody actually knows what it's going to do. This is why almost every medication says, if you're pregnant, don't take it. They actually have no idea if it's safe or not. They just want to make sure they write that in, so they make sure that they're covered just in case. Nobody wants to test medications on people who have yet to be born because the effects can be catastrophic. You've seen pictures of the thalidomide disaster, I'm assuming, at some point, with little tiny arms and legs. Thalidomide was a common pain reliever, and they gave it to women specifically for during pregnancy. Turns out that if you're an adult, it's fine, but if you're young, it inhibits the growth of blood vessels, which means when you're trying to grow an arm, the blood vessels don't grow, which means the arm stops there. You just get little tiny arms. And depending on which state you are in while developing, different things might be doing that. It was a huge disaster. In-group bias. Why is this so small? Oh, because I did zoom, page width. Take the form of employing stereotypes to explain the behavior of outsiders. That's when your group is the best group, and every other group, they're just bad because they are. I'd like to point out, despite any rhetoric you see, that immigrants, according to every study ever done, commit less crime than citizens. They just apparently work hard and open restaurants. John? Done?
Yeah.
Excellent. Negativity bias. The tendency to weight negative information more heavily than positive information. This is all over algorithms now. It turns out if you're advertising and you tell somebody how good something is, it's far less likely to be shared than if you gossip about how bad something is. Everybody wants to know about the bad stuff and what they hate. And so and we've long known that if you're running a political campaign, negative political campaigns, how much the other person is evil, do far better than positive campaigns about how much good you're going to do. Did I just hear a cat?
Well, I think it was someone screaming.
I'm going to go with cat.
Oh wait, this is.
Now again, I want to go through this quickly, so I won't show you the film. How many of you, and I'm not actually going to do this, so don't get your hopes up, but think, if I said, we'll each put $10 on the table, and we'll flip a coin. If you win, you get all 20 bucks, you double your money, and if you lose, you get nothing. How many of you would be willing to do that right now?
Like you lose the $10 or nothing happens?
Pardon? If you lose your $10, but then I get 20. How many would do that right now? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. And how many people would absolutely not do that? No way, Jose. Definitely 2, 3. Interesting. 4, maybe. Okay, of those who said you definitely wouldn't, so I'm going to talk to you 4. You put on 10 bucks. I put on 12. $10 bill and a tune. Now would you do it? Hands up if you change it, like you 4, you would do it. How about if I made it 15? You win, you walk away with 25 bucks. You lose 10. You would do it now? It's $15, an extra $5 was your price. What would it take?
At least 2 times.
At least, so you want me to put down 20 bucks?
Yes, at least.
Yeah. What would it take for you?
Just the 15.
You would go with the 15.
Yeah.
Yourself? You would do it if the amount was smaller. What would it take at the level of 10 bucks?
Use the level of the game.
Never, just never.
Do you know how much 10 bucks is? If you convert it to
I
how
put,
much
no,
cash-
you said never. I put down $1,000.
Yeah, no.
No. No. I put down $1 million in cash. I open a suitcase. There's like people with glasses and black clothing and security guards. There's $1 million on the side, and you're $10, and we'll flip a coin. You win. You get $1,010,010. You consistent. The reason I do this is a very common thing. There's lots of people who I am someone who would also say no. My value it'd have to be at least 100. I wouldn't even do it at like 80.
What?
Yeah, I would take me about $100.
We should do it.
I don't have that many $10 bills. I mean, I could get away with it in this class because there's enough of you. Well, if it was $10, we just did that version.
Let me see it again.
Would I be expected to lose any money?
No.
No, because
Well, maybe.
statistically and mathematically, what is the outcome of that bet on average if you play it more than once? How much money will you make?
Nothing. 0.
Zero. There's literally no risk. If you make it at any one time, yes, there's a 50-50 chance. But if you were to do this all the time, you should never lose money because eventually you'll make it back and it should even out. And if there's any amount on the other side, like any amount, even $1, it immediately tips in your favor and you should make the bet right away. That's known as negativity bias. Negativity bias is when it's in your favor, but the pain of the loss is larger than the thrill of the gain. You don't want to take risks. And the reason this can be a problem is because people don't take risks when they should, because they view all of the outcomes not as you're doing this all the time, but it's a one-time situation. It's a 50% chance of loss. It's not a 50% chance of loss, because you get opportunities like this all the time. If you are never acting when it's in your favor, then you might be not be taking risks when you should, when it would actually be to your advantage. They did a study on people who believed they were lucky. Joe? And they found out those people on average had higher salaries. They on average had better outcomes when they asked for things like raises. They were more likely to. There's a whole host of factors that they did a little bit better than when controlled for socioeconomic class and other things. And it turns out it's not that they were lucky, but their belief that they were lucky overcome a certain amount of negativity bias, and they just took more calculated risks. Now, for some people, I would say, yeah, you took a calculated risk, but whoa, were you bad at math? But in other times, if you can actually calculate like that's in your favor, you maybe want to take a bit more risks.
So does that mean I should pour my entire life savings into gambling?
If you encounter a gambling house where it's a 50-50 chance and they'll give you more than you bet, absolutely. I'd pour in millions. There's actually a gentleman in BC who did that like 30 years ago. The lottery tickets, the scratch-offs, went on sale, and then it was getting near the end of the season, and they had a lot of this certain type, and so they offered like a super sale where you could buy a whole bunch. He took out a loan from the bank, got a bunch of friends, and bought them from every store he could, because he realized that the odds of winning versus the amount, it tipped the other way. Statistically, if he scratched enough, it should have been impossible for him to lose. He should have gotten a 25% return on his investment. And he got a loan from the bank. He was able to convince the bank to loan him money to gamble. That's how good the odds were. He bought them all. He had made his money back before he got through the first stack. I think he had like 12 huge stacks of lottery tickets. So yeah, there's a gambling house that will offer you odds in your favor. Now there's a lot of people, myself included, who are like, I don't want to lose money, and the pain of losing is naturally really high. Makes sense, we're mammals. If you lose an arm, that's a permanent thing. You don't want to take risks with that kind of thing. But money is much more a fear mill. You can make it back. There's plenty of people who have zero money and somehow seem to do fine. Fun. No, that one's more complicated. No, let's not do that one. It is a usefulness about in-group bias. This is just undocumented immigrants can do less crime than native-born citizens. This is from 2015 in Texas. Overconfidence effect. So here's one where you think that you're good. The number of grade 9s I've had to talk to in the last 2 weeks alone, they're like, no, you don't understand, Mr. Nichols. I know I'm doing terribly. But if I just lock in, I'm a straight A student. What do you mean if you've never locked in your life? And even if you did lock in, it's April. You're not making up for all that. If I just lock in, I'm fine. I'll just lock in. Okay, maybe you could. Grade 9's not that hard. Grade 10's not that hard. Maybe you don't lock in grade 10, but you know you could have. By the time you get to grade 11, if you had no locked in the previous, you can't lock in grade 11 necessarily and do as well as you hope because you lack all that. There's no amount of locking in that might make it up by that time. Maybe it will. Some people are that bright. Maybe it will. That would actually be sad because then if you're not locking in then, you might miss your foundation for university. Everybody seems to think they're going to become a famous basketball star, end up on a soccer team in the World Cup, or in Canada, play for the NHL. You are not going to play for the NHL. I mean,
What if you're gifted?
no, kids, this is where a teacher gets to tell you, don't follow your dreams, do something sensible. You may have a dream, it's never going to happen. Might as well give up now. Just telling you the truth. Kids' chances are about 1 in 4,000, and each level gets harder. That's the chances of you hitting a certain level, not just getting to the NHL. Now, do some people get in? Yeah. The best one, I think, interview I ever saw, what's the name of the actor who plays he's going to be in the next Avengers.
Robert Downey Jr.
No.
Who does he play?
Yeah, I'm just Star-Lord.
Oh, Chris Pratt.
Chris Pratt. He did an interview, and they were like, what advice would you give to young actors? Because obviously you're an accomplished actor, you're making tons of money. And he's saying, you're not writing down that I said to give up your dreams that you're texting, are you? Put your phone away. Over there. And he just immediately started laughing. He says, I know so many people who don't get parts that are better actors than I am. They are masters of their craft. It's hilarious you asked me that. I got lucky. Everybody I know who's a famous actor got lucky. We put in hard work. We have talent. Like, he wasn't putting himself down. Like, yeah, I can do this. But there's so many good people out there. At some point, it's just luck. And everybody who's at the top always thinks it's because they work the hardest, and it's not. Being a world famous actor takes a lot of luck. And you need to realize that while you're working at the local diner, making money and trying to get into acting, is that it just might, he knows more people that never made it than people who made it. And he's really honest about success and successful. And his analogy was, asking me for acting advice is like asking a lottery ticket winner for financial advice. The people you want to talk to are the extras who will never have a major role in their entire career, but have learned how to at least pay off a mortgage. And there's a ton of people that have learned how to just work in movies, and they just work and work and work, and they make enough money. Sure, you hope for the stardom, but unless your plan includes all the backups, I am not going to show those. Maybe I should show those. Should I show those?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah, go ahead, bro.
Everybody should know the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah.
It's a little mean, though. Let's see which one this is. Yeah, that one's terribly mean. Oh, sign in if you've been granted. This is a private video. Yeah, I can't see that. How many of you have watched American Idol? One person. Two people.
Is it like America's Got Talent?
I have never watched.
Is American Idol just singing?
Yeah, yeah. It's just singing. In any one of the shows in which you start with a large pool and go to a small pool, I think America's Next Top Model used to be at least like that. I watched a few of those. I love the first shows. I've never made it to the end to the finale. I don't care about the finale. I love, as a teacher, the first like 5 or 6 when everybody's applying and nobody knows how bad they are. Like the person who gets up and with complete confidence because they've sung at home and their mom and their dad and all their siblings and all the people that go to their church and everybody in school has told them how awesome they are, and not one person has told them that they're not in tune. It's like, and then the first time that panel says, you are an awful singer, maybe you should practice.
Can we watch that?
First time they get honest information ever in their life. It's useful. It was probably way too harsh.
Can we watch it?
No, it is. It's the video I had saved that did that apparently has been privated, so I can't show it to you. The other one is a skit where they do it, and it's a little too mean. The Dunning-Kruger effect. No, that's fine. This is just the last one, and this I'm going to use this, and I'm going to say that the last one you write down is all the isms. Sexism, racism, the etc. And any ones you care to pass on. This was something that came up a few years ago. We took a picture of a black hole, and by definition, it is a black hole. You can't take a picture of it. But we, on a little tiny rock circling the sun, went, we're going to take a picture of that. And we did. And she was the lead researcher of that particular area. Her algorithm and her work in organizing all of it was instrumental in taking that particular picture. The picture is in there, and that is her honest reaction when they first processed the data. And then I used it in this class as an example, because where's this other picture? Yeah, because naturally, because she's in charge and people said, oh, this is so cool, here's a person who was instrumental in doing this, what would you expect happened online? Pardon? Oh, no, like she's the lead, like everybody there absolutely respects. Online though, I'm just saying, like, think of a podcast with like middle-aged, baldy, mediocre men. If you've ever heard any of those, they immediately went, obviously she couldn't have done this. Why are they talking about the whole team? Everybody contributed. Why are we celebrating the things of one woman when it probably wasn't even her? They even found the person who has contributed the most to the database, and it's actually, look, she was taking his credit, and they found his picture. It's like, he's the guy that added the most information. Turns out he was just the IT administrator, like for the database. So his name was attached to all the picture and image files, which are naturally big. They have nothing to do with him. And they also picked the wrong person because it was kind of a manosphere thing, and it turns out he's also on the rainbow spectrum, and he made fun of them, and they didn't like that very much, and it went on and on and on and on. And there is the thing where we as a society tend to venerate individuals who make discoveries and put it on one person. Elon didn't invent Tesla or the electric car. Einstein didn't do everything in terms of physics. There is no one researcher, but we certainly celebrate those who do individual achievements, and she was the lead researcher, but the biases got in the way of everybody trying to figure out what was going on, because when we announce something like, hey, this really cool thing was done, here's the lead researcher, the gender of the researcher really matters for how it is perceived. A person I know worked in tech. They had to convince clients to buy their tech. It was an online thing that worked with email, and they had some very large clients. He was training a younger member. She'd been on for 5 years, and one day he was having a particular problem. It's like nobody he talks to is listening to him. They are questioning his ability, and he's been doing this for years. Good plans, easy clients who trust him, like didn't believe a word he said, questioned everything, and their questions were stupid, like they didn't know what was going on, and he knows that. And finally he realizes, because they work in the same office, somewhere in IT, their email signatures got switched, and he was signing off as her. And so he went to her and like, does this happen all the time? And she's like, yeah. I mean, not every client, but yeah. So for an entire week, he kept her email, and she had his. She had the best week of her life, and he had the worst week of his life. And he went to his bosses and says, I don't want to hear from you ever about how she needs to work harder and she's new. She's working way harder than I ever have to get those results. It's the sexism on part of our clients. We're just going to have to work around it in some way and come up with some things. It's endemic, and you often don't. He worked with her every day and didn't notice this until the email signatures were switched, because it doesn't present itself really obviously. People are allowed to ask questions. So yes, a client questioned you, but clients questioned me. Why is that different? And the difference is the amount and the sheer arrogance sometimes when you're speaking to an expert. So all the isms can be mentioned in terms of biases. So we now have our assignment. We're done. Maybe later. Go away. There we go. I will give you the assignment before we start watching the film. All hail Lord Abigail. Refuse to believe that. I was just gonna give you a flack.
Name.
I thought we were happy.
You did jump the town
Press
right
the
here.
end.
I didn't jump the bandwagon.
Yeah.
I moved Mr. Hacker Temper to jump the bandwagon.
We told PG was 55 on that.
Stop asking. You just have to do Batman. Who cares? I care.
Oh my god.
It looks so tough.
This was supposed to staple and double side. It didn't. Did I give you one?
Oh, I got one.
So, I am just giving you the first page for the first film. I will give you the second page before you watch the second film. You will have to put them together.
There's a film?
There's a film. We're going to watch 50 minutes of one film, 50 minutes of another film, get your right of analysis, use everything you know about biases, ethics, and logic, and then we're done, we're going to do physics.
Where's my sheet at, bro? Wait, maybe it's 12:05.
All right?
Wait, I need to make my second fee. My second varsity.
When the bell goes.
What the hell?
Although technically I have to say as a teacher, the bell isn't the
No, I don't even have one. What did it about?
If I'm just the bell goes,
It should have gone. Question? What? I told you. This is, this is not the actual notes for the film. It was supposed to be stapled to this page. I'll give it to you next day. However, this is a pre-viewing reflection, so this is homework. I will give you homework in 2 days. And this is to say, what is your current opinion on GMOs? What do you know about what makes a trustworthy source? And what is the difference between natural evolution and artificial genetic manipulation? Your thoughts on paper first. It's important to write them down so you can't change them later in retrospect and change your memory. The act of writing them down will also make you more firmly entrenched in them. That's something that's useful to know. And then we'll start watching next day. Okay, no, 12:25.
12.
What?
Then our last class would be 30 minutes long.
I think it ends at 12:05.
No, I think it ends at 12 straight, and then the other thing starts at 12.
While you're waiting, start writing down your reflections.
12 and then 12.
Wait, about GMO?
Yeah, about GMOs. Oh, it ends at 12. You have 3 minutes. Write them down. Write them down. Also, I am not going to grade you on which side you end up on. I will be completely clear about my bias. But I'm doing that so that you know I'm not trying to keep it a secret. I believe in science. I think science clearly supports one side. That will really be obvious when I discuss them. However, if you, for your own very good reasons, come up, I'm not going to mark you. What I'm saying is I'm not marking you on your conclusion. I'm marking you on your analysis. And there's lots to analysis. I know.
No, it's a
Oh, okay. Joe, you were working. You were reflecting.
Wait, we haven't. What film would that be?
Imagine
Okay, wait, I have to do something then. Wait, yo, I need to be so hyped in your job.
Yo, here's camera.
Wait,
But then that'd be so cool, because like, then you wouldn't have to do anything.
wait, nobody's getting in your results.
I thought you got paid out.
Organism.
I think you got paid
So,
out.
like, you know, most of the
No, actually, that's
vegetables and fruits are eaten to their gyms. So, like, they don't get, like, diseases and, like, they rot as fast. Genetically. I think so.
Yo, Sal, look at the group chat, bro.
That was what? Wow.
Oh, Sal's not in our group chat. What? Are you still in the rowing group chat? I think I'm nuts, man.
Why'd you, wait, what?
Bro, after the stuff that was said, bro, I was like, at a loss for words.
No, let's not.
You say it, you say it, you say it, and be like, yo, that's crazy.
No, because then they're gonna be playing now.
No, say it.
Let it be like.
Come on, say it.
go, I want to see your reflection. If there's not enough writing on it, it makes any better.
How much writing is on?
Matt, what are we supposed to
Oh, see, if I tell you, then you'll just do the minimum. But if I don't tell you, you'll do what's good.
What's it on?